Hello and welcome. I hope you're all well and staying safe. In this video we're going to be looking at some budget weapons to run on Tarkov. To get some of the prices I've shown here, you're going to have to use the flea market, so make sure to inspect the weapons you buy just to make sure there's no missing stuff on them. I'm going to split these weapons between long range weapons and short range weapons, and first we're going to look at the long range weapons. Any of the sights and things that I put on these weapons are completely optional. You can use your personal preference, or you can just use iron sights if you think that's more viable for yourself. The first weapon we're going to look at is the AK-74M, and what I'm running on this one is a PWS compensator with a rubber butt pad and a PSO scope. It's fully automatic, so you probably want more than the 10 rounds that I've listed on the price here, but with 10 rounds of BP you should be able to put down most people that are armed about class 4. Now if you wanted to be able to put down class 5 or class 6 armoured people, you're going to want to buy BS or 7N39. The gun's chambered in 545x39, so if you need any different ammo for it, you can get that sort of, you've just got to buy in that ammo type. Next we've got the SV98, which really just needs a scope and that's it. It's basically a Mosin with a mag, and for 24,000 rubles it's ridiculous. The reason it's so cheap is it spawns as a scav. You get one a lot when you spawn, so people just get out with it and then sell them on the flea market. Really, the only downside I can see is with this scope particularly, you can see the crosshair at the front sight, but it's not a massive downside for a gun that can put down class 6 and whatnot. Next is the M700, which is a bolt action like the SV98, except it fires a smaller round, which is 7.62 by 51. It can still penetrate up to class 5 with an M80 round. The scope I've got on it works quite well because you don't end up with the front sight problem that the SV98 has. And the scope I'm using there, I believe, is the Pillad scope with the UTG mount. Probably butchered what it's called, but they've all got stupid names, you know what I mean. Now we've got the ADAR, which is a fantastic gun, fires 5.56 rounds. It's semi-automatic as well, so you can put down multiple shots downrange. I changed out the gas block, else you end up with a really weird front sight problem like with the SV98, and that's for the MK12. It's a bit pricey to switch it out for the cost of the gun, but I personally think you get better performance not having your vision blocked in the scope. You can also use M8 55A1 or M995, which will penetrate up to class 6. Now the M1A you will only be able to get at this price with a trade at Peacekeeper level 3, which isn't very beginner, but if you rush Peacekeeper you can get it quite early on, and it is a very good trade to get because most people don't bother using it. And the trade items you're using, you end up only spending about 36,000 rubles for the entire gun, which is fantastic. The gun, again, chambered at 7.62 by 51, but it's semi-automatic, so unlike the M700, it's got a real kick to it. This next one's the Vepr Hunter, which is basically the poor man's M1A, which is stupid because the M1A is actually cheaper if you do the trade, but that doesn't matter. The picture you're seeing is incorrect because on that one I've got the SVD mount on it, the SVD low profile. The one I've quoted, the mount, is actually the Pillad side mount, which is going to look horrendous on it, but you can make the gun for that much money. It just has a different, like the sight's slightly higher, so it blocks off your screen when you're not aiming down sights. And this gun's chambered again in 7.62 by 51, and with M80 you can penetrate class 5, and it's also semi-automatic. The Mosin is a good, fantastic bolt action rifle. It's got a very unique sight that you can't only use this one, but it is quite cheap. I think this one's around 16,000 rubles as well. You can buy the whole thing from Prep, or I think it's 2 or 3. You can make them cheaper, but you've got to use the flea market, and it's really hit or miss whether you're going to get one that has all the bits attached, with the internal magazine. Basically the difference between this one and the SV98, you can have a 5-round mag in it, whereas this one's got an internal magazine, so every time you want to reload, you physically put the bullets in through the top. You top load it. Now this one's chambered in 7.62 by 54R, which in SNB round will easily penetrate class 6. The SKS is a fantastic weapon. especially in the early game. PS rounds will be, alright to use in the early game, but in the later stages you really need the BP rounds, and they're quite expensive, which is why I don't recommend this gun as highly as others. Now we're moving on to the short range weapons. It's going to be mostly the same weapons, just with a Weaver sight on instead, because a Weaver sight's cheap and quite good. The only change I'd recommend making to this SKS configuration is perhaps switching out the 10 round internal mag for a 25 round or a 35 round magazine. The reason being is if you're in a short range encounter, you want to be able to swap out and have full ammo and not have to top load this SKS. It's fine when you've got a long range encounter, when you can just sit back and reload at your leisure, but in like a corridor like dorms, you want to be able to get you want to be able to reload your weapon in seconds. This AKM is pretty much the same as the other one, but instead of a PSO scope, it's got the Weaver sight and a tactical tooler mount. Now the tactical toolers come in two different variations. I think they come in the TT1000 and the TT01. I'm using the TT01, which basically just replaces the rear sight on the AK with a little mount, whereas the TT1000 replaces the entire back sort of dust cover rail. So if you wanted to put a big scope on like a Bravo or an Elcan, you'd go for the TT1000. Now I wouldn't recommend buying and modding an AK-74U, but if you've got one from say a Scav run or the Scav box or something like that, it's not a bad weapon. If you put a few attachments on it, you can get the same performance out of an AK-74 with relatively little cost. And the plus side is, you're probably always going to get this gun back in insurance. The ADAR is a fantastic weapon at long ranges and close range encounters, and one of the best things about it is it's very common on scavs. So you probably will end up with a lot of these, and they are completely lethal. My biggest gripe is you have to change out the gas tube unless you choose to go with the rear sights. The iron sights on the ADAR aren't the worst, so you could always do that. Again, we have the M1A. Now I love the M1A. It's a cheap gun, it's versatile, you can get 50 round mags for it, 20, 30, 50 round mags, and it fires one of the biggest rounds in the game. Even in its most basic form, which this is, all I've got on there is a mount and a Weaver scope. It's completely lethal. It's also extremely easy to stockpile these weapons, because they only take up 1x5 slots in the stash if you don't have a magazine in them. So it's not one of these weapons that you have to break down, it's just ready to go. And that was the last weapon. In the end, I would recommend definitely trying out every weapon on this list and coming up with what you like best. Everyone will have different playstyles and every weapon will perform differently in different people's hands. But I personally love the M1A. It might be horrible to you and you may love the Vepr Hunter. The point of the Tarkov, I think, is that all of the guns feel so unique that even if a gun isn't potentially what's viable in the meta game, you might be a god with it simply because you like the way it feels. It makes you more confident, so you can push, you can play riskier, and that might pay off for you. I think the easiest way to find out what works for you is take one of these guns, mod it, go into an offline raid with factory with scavs, and just set yourself tagged and cursed. See how many you can kill. Now these aren't the best weapons. I mean, for an extra 30-40k more rubles, you can get an SVD with a PSO scope, and arguably that is probably better than any weapon that's been listed here. But these are the weapons I'd recommend to beginners, to be able to put down people who are class 4 armoured or more. And the reason I'd recommend a lot of them is simply because at this late in the game, you're going to be getting a lot of those back in insurance anyway. Probably not the M1As, but the Hunters, the AK-74Us, perhaps even the AK-74Ms, all have a chance of coming back in insurance, and the more times it comes back in insurance, the less its cost overall. I hope you found this video helpful and informative. I hope it gets you a lot of kills in Tarkov, and if you have any questions about what mount to use, how to do anything else in the game, you need help with a quest, whatever you need, just give me a message in the comments and I'll see what I can do for you. Thank you for watching. See you next time. And now we have a blooper to make this video over 10 minutes long so that I get matched in the algorithm, so I can get famous and get all that YouTube money.
in the hallway.
Are you using the corridor?
He's opened the door. Oh!
I'm sorry!
You get him, Gavin. I think he was geared.
No, Michael got both of them.
There was two.
Oh, we got him!
I shot his leg.